White House staffers have reportedly gathered paperwork for dozens more pardons and commutations of criminal offenders. As you may recall, President Trump earlier this month commuted the sentence of grandmother Alice Marie Johnson, who'd served almost 22 years for drug offenses. President Obama had said no to her request for clemency. Alice Johnson was the 7th pardon or commutation granted by President Trump, including the posthumous pardon of the first black heavyweight boxing champion, Jack Johnson. Conservative commentator Dinesh D'Souza, who pleaded guilty to campaign finance violations, and former Bush administration official Scooter Libby, convicted in the 2003 leak that revealed the identity of CIA operative Valerie Plame. Well, right around the time of the Alice Johnson pardon, the president made what he called an astonishing offer to protesting NFL players: pass along folks they consider victims of the criminal justice system, and he will give them a chance. The Eagles' Malcolm Jenkins, Seahawks' Doug Baldwin, the retired Anquan Boldin, and the Saints' Benjamin Watson responded to the offer in a New York Times op-ed, asking for a blanket pardon for drug offenders like Alice Johnson, who've already served very long sentences. We're happy to have Benjamin Watson on with us tonight to tell us more. Benjamin, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. You say that individual cases is one thing, but there are other systematic problems that are all through our criminal justice system, and you think the president needs to do more. I want to read a little bit of the piece that you co-authored here. It says, President Trump could help. He could use his powers, including the clemency power, to make a real dent in the federal prison population. People like Alice Johnson, for example, should not be given de facto life sentences for nonviolent drug crimes in the first place. The president could stop that from happening by issuing a blanket pardon for people in that situation who have already served long sentences. Benjamin, how do you feel like he'd be able to tackle that? How many people are we talking about?
Well, honestly, we're talking about thousands, and you mentioned that the president and his staff are reviewing some of those names. We applaud the president, and we're happy for people like Alice Johnson who were able to get out, especially after serving such a long sentence. But we think that there's an opportunity here to affect positive change systemically. When you look at this issue, when you look at people who are serving life without parole for nonviolent drug offenses, those who have served 35, 20 years, and are, especially the elderly, people that are 60 plus, people that are getting along in age as families, grandchildren, there's no need for them to be in. And so while it's important to talk about the individual cases, we think that the president has an opportunity to do something that is much, much greater. And we want to push him in doing that. We want to not only respond to him, but respond to him in a way that takes direction to the bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. You know, of course, that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has been working to try to bring together some bipartisan criminal justice reforms. His own father was in the prison system, and this is very near and dear to his heart. We've heard a number of senators and House members from both sides of the aisle trying to work on something. Are you hopeful that something will move forward with reforming the system, the sentencing, the conditions of prison, and also people's reentry into society when they're released?
I'm very hopeful because this is a bipartisan issue. As a believer, I really believe in Micah 6:8, which talks about doing good, loving kindness, doing justice, and walking humbly with your God. And because of that, I want to see justice in all categories. I want to see people who commit crimes be punished for their crimes, but I want the punishment to be fair. I want it to be administered fairly across all demographics, across our entire population. There was recently an act that was passed, I believe it's called the Clean Slate Act up in Pennsylvania, where we're able to expunge some of the records of people that have been crime-free for 10 years, and so they don't have to carry that burden forever, preventing them from getting housing, preventing them from getting certain jobs and things like that. So I have been encouraged when I've looked at criminal justice reform. I've been encouraged by the president actually saying that this is something that he wants to lend his voice to. And as players, as citizens, as fathers, as husbands, as brothers, and as people that care and love this country, we think this is something that needs to be corrected, and we believe that now is the time.
You've done a lot of work with all kinds of things. I know that you've gotten involved with International Justice Mission. I have a lot of friends working on that, too, on sex trafficking. You are not somebody who just writes a check. You actually get physically involved on these trips and trying to help with these things. And you just talked about fatherhood and families. It's something you've written about. You have an amazing Twitter feed. I would tell folks they'd be very inspired and encouraged to follow you on Twitter. But talk about the role of fathers and of men in society and what you think is happening in 2018.
Well, fathers have the great privilege of leading not only their families, but in turn leading an entire generation. There is a lack of fathers in the United States and in the world in general. Right now, about 33% or so of our children in this country don't have fathers. And so there is somewhat of a fatherlessness crisis that is going on. And because of that, young men and women are searching for their identity. A father is his son's first hero, and he's his daughter's first love. He's the one who kind of sets the tone and sets I guess the expectations for his sons and for his daughters. And so as a father, I take my job very seriously. You mentioned International Justice Mission. We just came back actually from a trip to Dominican Republic, combating sex trafficking down there and seeing the work that is being done. And so this justice issue for me is something that spans all walks, all issues when it comes to trafficking, when it comes to the criminal justice system, when it comes to people being treated fairly, when it comes to right to life and sanctity of life. All those things to me are all in one basket. And what's been kind of discouraging when it comes to this issue and others is that we do sometimes divide along party lines, where I believe that they all kind of serve the same purpose and they all should be looked at in similar light.
Well, you are somebody who not just talks the talk, you walk the walk, and folks can follow you and see that and be inspired, hopefully, for the rest of us to step in and see where we can make the world a better place. You give me hope, Benjamin Watson. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We love having you.
Thank you, Sharon.